Yesterday, we made the case that it was time to let Jordan Love play out the string on the season. Yesterday, we also found out that Aaron Rodgers plans to play this Sunday against the Chicago Bears. We take the other side and explain why it can make sense for Rodgers to play, or at least what can be gained, what Matt LaFleur might be thinking. All of that, plus our friend Lily Zhao for another rousing edition of Zhao You Doin. All of that starts right now.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You were Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Lily Zhao on the program today. We will get to her shortly. First, Aaron Rodgers tells Pat McAfee scans come back clean. He expects to play on Sunday. I mentioned on the show yesterday at the end that Matt LaFleur not saying this, not coming out and saying he's going to be good on Monday, could point to some disagreement over the plan. That could have been the case on Monday, by the way. But he said there was more things to work through. Now, Tuesday is the next day, so there could have been things that were worked through, things in the morning that were discussed, plans put in motion, all of that stuff. It also could have been as simple as Aaron wanted to be the one to say, I plan to play. And I'm fine with that. Here is, I think, the important part of all of this. You know, I made the case yesterday that Jordan Love, coming out of the bye, it makes sense for him to be the quarterback. But I saw the value in Aaron Rodgers playing this week if he wants to play. And then said, okay, well, by the Rams game, they might be out of it anyway. And there's plenty of quick math we can go through in numbers and the games back that they are of the teams ahead of them. Like, they're not going to catch the Cowboys. And they're almost certainly not going to catch the Giants or the Commanders, two of whom have the tiebreaker against the Packers. And unfortunately for Green Bay, it's the two who are the most likely to lose some of these games. But those two teams also play each other. And so someone's got to win them. It is extremely, extremely unlikely. The Eagles are going to win that division. The Cowboys, the Giants, and the Commanders could all get in. That being said, I understand Matt LaFleur going, this was supposed to be a championship level team. Things didn't play out that way for a million different reasons. Saying before the season is really, truly over, throwing in the towel, could have negative impacts in the locker room. It could have players going, what's the deal? And then you have guys not playing with effort when you need a real evaluation of these guys as much as possible down the stretch. So if you're Matt LaFleur, you're going, yes, we have to, as a team, play out the string. And that means if Aaron Rodgers is cleared to go, Aaron Rodgers going. Now, it's not always if Aaron Rodgers wants to play. It does seem like Rodgers understands that at a certain point, if they're not chasing the playoffs, it doesn't make sense for him to be out there. That's an important step that we can't brush aside, because if Rodgers agrees, hey, once we're done chasing the playoffs, it's time to play Jordan Love, I don't need to be out there, then I think that is a signal to your team to say, everything's fine. This is not, tanking, you do send a little bit of a tanking message if you sit Rodgers before you need to. Now, I think everyone is an adult, and these guys know you're always putting this film on tape, and other teams are watching it. And so if you're an Adrian Amos or a Darnell Savage and you don't know what your future is on this team, you better put together some good tape here down the stretch, because you want someone else to say, that guy can play for us. If you're Dean Lowry, who just restructured his contract, if you're, a Chris Barnes, or, offensively, if you're an Allen Lazard, if you're a Sammy Watkins and you still want to play and you get a couple reps or whatever, you still want to maximize those reps. Players don't tend to tank. Teams do organizationally with the products that they put on the field. Putting Jordan Love out there would be a signal before you're ready. Now, again, I think you have to trust your locker room. You have to trust your guys to go out and still do their jobs. But I understand the position the coach is in to say, if I am going to ask you guys every day to bust your butts in practice going back to spring, then I have to do what's right by you and give the team the best chance to win every time we go out there. Because if we're not playing to win, what are we playing to do? So this is a delicate line to walk. It is easy for me as an outsider to say, this is the best thing long-term for the team. Now, I still think if you're Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy, you are not as worried about that. You're going, Matt LaFleur, it's your job to manage the locker room, figure out how to sell this. Coming out of the bye, it's Jordan Love or bust. But I also understand this might be the last stretch of games Aaron Rodgers plays in Green Bay. He may just decide he's done. Now, he doesn't sound like a guy who's done. I continue to believe that he will play in 2023. I continue to believe he's not walking away from $60 million in 2023. But it is the kind of thing where there's a chance, right? He's Aaron Rodgers. He is a complicated fella, and he could just decide, you know what? This team is not where it needs to be for me to compete for titles. The best thing for them is to play Jordan Love, and the best thing for me is to go to New York and play with Mike LaFleur and try and win a championship in New York, because if I win a championship in New York, I will be a conquering hero. He immediately would be the biggest star in New York. Move over Aaron Judge. Sorry. If Aaron Rodgers wins a title with the Jets, he becomes the biggest celebrity in New York City. He becomes the biggest celebrity in the biggest city in America. Tell me there's not a little bit of allure there. That's an interesting proposition. So this is, I made the case yesterday, and I believe in the case that I made yesterday, but I understand too, it's more complicated than that. And it's more complicated than that for Matt LaFleur. Now, all of that being said, it doesn't really change what I said yesterday, because I said, look, fine, let him play against Chicago. Because by the time, the Rams game rolls around, they could be out of it. But if they're not, guess what the Rams game could be? The last home game for Aaron Rodgers in a Green Bay Packers uniform. Does he want that opportunity? Now, if he's going, I'm playing next year, so who cares? I think, then it's play Jordan Love time. If the path is for those last 4 games, you have to win out and 18 different things have to happen, which, by the way, is kind of the path now. So the Bears game doesn't really change that much for me. But teams might clinch over the next 2 weeks. The Vikings have a chance to clinch the North. So, then you're fighting for wild cards, and it's a lot of different kinds of if this, and then point differential and conference record and all that stuff. Is that the same thing as actually being alive in the playoff race? I don't think so. I don't think so. So we'll see. I think what happens post-bye is going to tell us everything we need to know. Because I expect them to go in and beat Chicago. And then we'll see. Then we'll truly see who is going to be the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers when they take on the LA Rams 2.5 weeks from now at Lambeau Field. That will tell us a lot, not just about the short-term future of the Packers, but potentially about the long-term future of the Packers. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can get a car you want wherever you want it from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the United States, the UK, Canada, and Australia. You can get an SUV, a minivan for a family road trip. That would have been really nice for me and my family. When I had just had a baby, we had a 4-door sedan, and it was really hard to take a road trip to go home during some of the really tough pandemic parts. We got a road trip in this small-ish car. It didn't even seem like, when it was just two of us, it seemed like a decent amount of space. With a baby and all the crap that you have to bring with a baby, all of a sudden, you need a lot more space. We have not one, but 2 SUVs now. Find an affordable economy car if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. Again, something when I was living in New York City, something that would have been very helpful to me then. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive. Every trip is backed by a liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we are sure you're going to love. Find Block Forever now and wherever you get your podcasts. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. Khalil takes the conversation about football to the next level. You hear Christian McCaffrey talk about his love-hate relationship with the fantasy football community, and Juju Smith-Schuster give his most honest opinion on other players and positions in the league. Ryan and his guests discuss player psyches, sports betting, playing through pain, being a leader, and how to deal with combative teammates. Nothing is out of bounds. Available for free on Audible or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch the full Block Forever series available wherever you get podcasts. Available now. Audible. Get in the game. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, my all-sports show, not just Packers. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Is it Jordan Love season? I don't know. We will see. It sounds like it won't be coming up on Sunday against the Chicago Bears, that Aaron Rodgers will get a chance to continue to own the Chicago Bears. Are there lizard people living at the center of the earth? I don't know. But maybe Deshaun Kaiser can tell us. If you don't know that reference, go find the interview that has been making the rounds on Twitter. Maybe Lily Zhao has some thoughts on all of these things. Joining me now, as she does every Wednesday from Fox 6 in Milwaukee, Lily Zhao. Lily, I will not ask for your thoughts on lizard people who live in the center of the earth, but I will ask you, Zhao You Doin?
Hey, Peter, I'm doing well. Sadly, you know what? I don't really have any sort of conspiracy theories. Although I'm kind of like, how does Santa go down the chimney chute? I don't know about that one. But, you know, anything else? I don't really have conspiracy theories out there, but I'm interested in lizard people, so we'll go with it. But anyways, I'm doing well. So how you doing?
I'm good. I thought we addressed this. Tim Allen made a movie in the 90s called The Santa Claus. You can go watch it. This is canonical, so this is how Santa Claus works. Everyone should know that. And so one of my favorite, I remember trying to go see it in the movie theater, and it was sold out. The only movie I ever went to that I could not get in because it was sold out. We had to come back a different day.
Ooh, that sucks.
Yeah. And it's great. It's still a great movie. We still watch it around the holidays. It holds up. It really does.
Yeah.
Speaking of holding up, it sounds like Aaron Rodgers is going to play. The scans came back on his ribs, at least according to him, on the Pat McAfee show. Matt LaFleur sounded less sure on Monday in his press conference with Packers media. Are you surprised that this is the route that Rodgers wants to take at this point in the season?
I don't know if I'm surprised. I think I was kind of expecting this because, again, he's a guy that, his thumb's been broken for X amount of weeks and, he really wouldn't disclose it. He's tough. I know he can play through a lot of pain. He knows he's the head guy there, so he's not going to, I'm nicked up a little bit, even though an oblique and a thumb injury isn't a little bit. But I think in his mind, he's like, well, I can still function. I can still play. I want to be out there. Again, I think if this was more of a severe injury, I don't think he would be, putting himself in a position to get hurt even worse. But I think, a lot can happen from now until Sunday when they do play. So it's encouraging the scans did come back well. And then, like Matt LaFleur said, if he's healthy, ready to go, he'll play. But, I think a lot of people are kind of wondering, can he just sit out and heal? But I just don't think that's Rodgers' mentality to think that I can still function. I can still play. I don't want to be sitting on the sidelines.
If you were Matt LaFleur, would this be the decision you make?
It's tough because, again, you have a Hall of Fame quarterback who you've tied a lot of money to, who's the face of your franchise. I don't think anyone has the kahunas to say, let's bench him for Jordan Love. Very impressed with Love's progress. I think he'll do well whenever he does step in, hopefully sometime this year. But I don't think anyone in that organization will say, hey, let's bench Rodgers for Love when he still physically can play. But if I'm Matt LaFleur and you're looking at the scenario of, okay, this team's playoff chances are legitimately like thinner than thin. So is there a risk of having him out there and getting him hurt long term? Of course there is, but I know LaFleur is tied to Rodgers that way, where he's not gonna say no.
What I'm hearing, and the aggregators, you can all pick this up if anyone's listening that writes for one of those aggregation sites. Local reporter says she has more cojones than Matt LaFleur. Put that in the headline.
That's not what I said.
we will be there, but no, of course not. The Joe Barry question, Lily. How surprised are you that he is still the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers?
Oh man, I never advocate for anybody to lose their jobs. I know it's going to be rare for them to make a change mid-season. However, it is kind of questionable at this point where, if you're not going to release Joe Barry, which we don't know the future of him with his organization moving forward, but with how the defense is played, I don't think you can discount potentially giving somebody else the reins and calling those defensive plays. This is not a knock on Joe Barry in that regard. It's whatever they're doing now with the scheme is not working. So why not try to find some other avenue to improve that? Because again, thin is to thin, but there's still a chance out there. It's not like they're completely out of the playoff hunt just yet. But yes, I don't think him being here now is surprising per se, because I just don't think Matt LaFleur would, do that shakeup mid-season. But I will say it's a little surprising that they haven't gone another avenue in terms of maybe somebody else calling the plays in that regard.
I want to be surprised by it. I really do, but I'm not. I'm not surprised by the Aaron Rodgers decision. I'm not surprised by the Joe Barry decision. Are they the decisions that I would make? Probably not. But the other thing is, I don't have to make them. So it's much easier for me or for you or for someone on the outside to say, this is the easy thing here. And we don't have to go to work with that person. We haven't been going to work with that person every day for the last, in this case, with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, 3+ seasons. In the case of Joe Barry, almost 2 seasons. So, and they have a history. I get that it's more complicated than that. And I am like you. I always feel a little icky about saying this person should be fired. Like, ugh, I hate that. Still, it seems like it's an untenable situation. For the Packers and the Eagles game, you mentioned Jordan Love. When Jordan Love gets the chance to come in, before he even steps on the field, when you see Aaron Rodgers go to the locker room, what is your immediate thought as it relates to Jordan Love? It was,
what can we expect to see out of him this time around? We've seen him make a start in Kansas City, and I'm sure, he would even say like, I could play better in that game. And again, he was, he knew he was going to be starting that game. But I think I was wondering, can we see the Jordan Love that could potentially be the full-on face of this franchise in the future moving forward, right? Because with whatever happens with Aaron Rodgers, they haven't traded Love yet. That they love him for a reason. They've kept on to him for a reason. What's that reason? And I think we saw that against the Eagles for a very, very small sample size. He looked a lot more comfortable out there. The field awareness on his running, he's new, he can still figure it out, but I thought his arm looked great. I thought he looked really comfortable in the pocket. I was impressed with his progress. And even Aaron Rodgers said he loved that, he was able to see Jordan become more comfortable and the growth there. And he said, I feel like a happy big brother watching him play out there, but I was impressed. I liked what I saw from Jordan out there.
Can I hit you with a conspiracy theory? It's not mine.
Sure.
I did not present this, but it was presented to me yesterday. That the reason Aaron Rodgers wants to continue to play this season is because he knows the more games Jordan Love has, the more he will show that he is worthy of being a franchise quarterback. Just people are saying this. I'm just your reaction, Lily.
I don't think it's a surprising mindset to have, right? Because when you're a quarterback that's you have a couple of years left because you're not going to play until you're 50. You always kind of have to wonder, is this my final year? Are they looking for my future? And, of course that happened a couple of years ago when they drafted Jordan. So I'm pretty sure it's obviously in Rodgers' mind of,
he did it to Brett Favre.
Exactly. And the stat 15 years ago, right? Rodgers comes in for Favre and almost to the day 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's wild.
Love comes in for Rodgers. So I'm pretty sure that's in his mind of, one day this kid could take my job. But I think for him, it's still, he came in 100% ready to go for this team. He wants to finish it out. But again, the injuries are kind of making it more of a narrative, I would say, unless, had Rodgers been healthy the entire season.
I don't think Rodgers is scared of that. I really don't. I think from day one, I think he's always been out to prove, look, I'm good enough that you don't have to worry about whether or not Jordan Love is good. I think that's sort of his mindset.
Yeah.
But it's also true that the more Aaron Rodgers plays and the less Jordan Love plays, the more Aaron Rodgers has control over his future, right? Because the less information you have on Jordan Love, the harder it is to say, okay, Aaron, if you want to play here, we don't want you to play here. Because you'd need a bigger sample size from Jordan Love, right? To say, we're going to move on with Love the way that they did with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. All that being said, I think it's fine if the Packers and Rodgers are going to play this week. Do you have an ideal time frame to see Jordan Love, given that we expect that the Packers are not going to make or continue to be in the playoff chase through the end of the season?
Another great question. I would say the Packers' chances are like a little bit above slim to none. And if there's still legitimately a shot, Rodgers is obviously playing. I think maybe the last couple of weeks of this season is when we see Love, but I just don't see Love really having a big enough role on the offense unless it's in cleanup time or if Rodgers gets hurt again. But the narrative is if they are completely out of it and there's a game left, like it's the Lions game or the Vikings game or whatnot, potentially in that game. But I still think that Aaron Rodgers is their guy and he's their starter, and we'll see him until he really can't play anymore this year.
It's interesting. My buddy Jacob Westendorf, who covers this team over at Game On Wisconsin and has a podcast, he suggested that they will try and get him a home game if he can play, just in case, because who knows? Rodgers could want to retire. And Rodgers, after the game on Sunday, said, "Look, once we're mathematically eliminated, we can have another conversation about whether or not I should be out there." I do think there is some. Just like he's earned the right that if he wants to play one more home game and that's it, then that makes sense. So that would be the Rams coming out of the bye. That would leave 3 games. I think 3 games is probably a nice sample size, right? At Miami. And then you have 2 home games, division opponents. I think Packer fans would love to see Jordan Love in the last 2 weeks in a way that they were not as stoked to see Brett Hundley or to see DeShone Kizer, right? It was not the same situation. It could be, albeit an inglorious one, but an opportunity to get him one last opportunity to play in front of the Lambeau Field crowd.
Right. And those games are still going to be important because who knows where the Lions are going to be. Maybe they're fighting for that final wild card spot. Maybe the Vikings are fighting for the top seed. And so those games are still going to be important. But again, it's kind of, you mentioned if he gets 2 or 3 games, it's kind of like a preseason slate, but games that matter in a big way. So it would be a really good test for him to really put on the blinders and say, okay, if I'm going to be the face of this franchise moving forward, I got to perform in these games. I think it'd be a great sample size for him. But I just don't see that really happening unless something happens with Rodgers.
It is the case that with 3 games left, Like if you look at the Commanders, they have a 3-game lead right now, plus the tiebreak. That's really 3.5 games.
Yeah, 3.5.
So if things stay the way they are, they're not catching the Commanders. The Cowboys, record-wise, unless the Cowboys just are like peeing down their legs, they're not going to catch them. And then that leaves the Giants, who also have the tiebreak. And I believe that's a 4-game lead right now. And then the Seahawks, who also have a 3-game lead. So it's not out of the question that with 3 games left, they're out of it. And that would give us that 3-game sample size. Just an interesting thing to think about. The Packers play the Bears this week, an incredibly banged up Bears team. Eddie Jackson has apparently a serious foot injury. He's not going to play. Darnell Mooney is not going to play. So even if Justin Fields plays, it is the skeleton crew for the Packers against the Bears. What gives you any hope that the Packers can stop the run well enough that this is the kind of game that gets them right as a team a little bit to have, the sort of impressive win that you'd want to see?
It is just, I don't know, Peter, it's just something about the Packers and the Bears where it's just kind of like the Packers are going to come out with a win somehow, some way. They're going to find a way in this game, right? I will say, though, I was really encouraged with what I saw offensively from them last week, despite, the 2 picks. And I thought their running game picked up. I thought A.J. Dillon played great. They were able to get those running backs in space, which is what you need. And I thought Christian, yet again, great game for him. So I think there were big strides made on the offensive side. But like you mentioned, defensively, especially when, if Justin Fields is playing, he's going to be – he's nicked up now. He's not going to be 100%. But, again, he still has that factor with his legs, and he's rushing like nobody's business. So they need to find a way. I mean, the previous week they gave up 300 yards through the air. Now it's 300 yards on the ground. So maybe it's 300 yards, and Trevor Siemian's playing, and he's chucking it down the field. But they need to figure out something defensively with that run defense because it was not good. If you're having over 20 missed tackles, I mean, that's not how you're playing winning football. They need to shore that up, Peter, because like you mentioned, that could be the recipe for success for the Bears because you still have David Montgomery who can run really, really hard. And if Fields plays, that's going to be another factor. But I somehow feel like the Packers are going to win this because it's Packers-Bears, and Rodgers will probably have a good game. We'll see. I
think all that is true. I think this is going to be another Christian Watson game. Like it's almost like Christian Watson has made up for all the times that we predicted he was going to be the X factor and he got hurt in those games.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he is the X factor every week. Like I can't let you go and not ask you about Christian Watson because the play, right? The 60-yard touchdown. That is what the Packers drafted, that ability. And I don't know that they've had a guy who can do that ever. Like maybe prime Jordy Nelson. Like I'm thinking of a play against the Patriots in 2014 where he took a slant to the house against Darrelle Revis and outran the whole defense. And that was sort of like the play that broke the Patriots back. But man, he is so fun. He is so fun.
He is so fun. And he just turned on those burners. And I'm like, those guys are not going to catch him. And
erased angles.
Right. And it's so unfortunate he's been dinged up this season because imagine we had a whole slate with him in training camp, in the regular season. Imagine what the stats could be. Imagine, how potent this offense could have been if he'd been, healthy the entire year. But that being said, him being on the field, I mean, it's electric. And I predict a big bomb to Watson on Sunday.
All right. You're owed. You are owed now. Of course, this will be the week that he has like 0 catches. It's like the Randall Cobb game, or something like that. That's just the way that the season has gone. Lily, last thing I asked you before Thanksgiving, your favorite Thanksgiving food. What? I'll ask you this in reverse now. What was the best thing that you ate over the weekend?
Ooh, you know what? I would say the ham.
Ooh,
love me some ham. It's so good. And then and then the mashed potatoes. I drenched that thing with gravy.
Of course.
I didn't have stuffing this year, which I am remiss to say. I did not have stuffing or dressing, however you call it. But I will say my ham and mashed potatoes and gravy. So good.
Ham and mashed potatoes. That's really all you need.
I know.
Ham and potatoes. Like that's just they're a classic combination for a reason. Lily, I appreciate your time. We will talk to you next week. And maybe we'll be talking about another Christian Watson show out. That would be great. Thanks, Lily.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks to Lily for joining the show. Awesome, as always, to talk to her. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It is so easy. You don't want to waste time with people who aren't really qualified or aren't really interested in a job just like yours. Simple tools like screening questions made easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who exactly you'd like to interview and eventually hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedinjobs.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedinjobs.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, my show. We have fun. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Crossover Thursday, Lauren Cox, Locked On Bears, our crossover edition. And then we're live on Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time on the Locked On Packers YouTube page. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, like we're doing on Friday, you can check us out on the Locked On Packers YouTube page to stay Locked On Packers.